everybody, and welcome to the very first session of the Dariel Conference for 2021. We are thrilled to have you in the third session of our conference as a whole, and we cannot wait to share this with you. As we kick off 2021, these talks will be focusing on a key point in Dariel, specifically personal growth and the different ways that this can happen. I'm delighted to announce and welcome today's speakers, Matthew Law, Kane Mooi, and Braun. As always, if you have a comment or a question, be sure to leave it in the Q&A section, and we will do our best to either answer throughout or do a more formalized Q&A after the talks. So the session itself is being live streamed, but a recorded version will also be made available on our YouTube page. So shameless plug, please go and like and comment and subscribe for more fascinating talks and activities. There are talks lined up for the next couple of months within Dariel. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Kane Mooi and Matthew. All right, welcome Kane and welcome Matthew. Would you guys want to jump on so long?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're well. We're just waiting for the slides, actually. Can everyone see the slide?
Yes.
We're waiting just a second to load. At the moment, we can see your beautiful faces.
Okay. This is going well.
Isn't it always? First one for the year. We always need a little bit of an adventure there. Okay. Matt, I think we need to just reload, please. We can see, unfortunately, not much else. It says the event will continue live in a moment. So just reshare your screen, please.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, there we go. Now we just need your beautiful faces and we are good to go.
Okay, I don't know how to add the beautiful faces.
There you go, you got it.
Okay, there we are. This is going really well.
Okay, cool. Let's start. Good day, everyone, and welcome to Learning to Swim Without Floaties, the art of dealing with new tech stacks and personal growth.
A little background on your presenters. My name is Matthew. I became a programmer because I love the sheer awesomeness of seeing Hello World pop up on my screen for the first time. Got my MCSD in 2015. I've been a developer for just over 5 years now.
And my name is Kane. In high school, I realized I wanted to become a programmer when I could press keys on a keyboard and make something out of nothing. I worked hard and got my BSc in information technology and have been a developer for over 3 years now.
Kane and I met in February of 2018, and funnily enough, our friendship started because he needed Wi-Fi and I had data to spare.
It's crazy that a friendship spawned from a Wi-Fi spot. At university, I was exposed to and learned quite a few different languages, including Assembly, C++, Visual Basic, C#, and Java. Even though I knew all of those languages, one of my first projects was to convert Pascal to C#. Did I put Pascal on my CV? Did Pascal come up during interviews? No.
You see, the company had a legacy system that needed to be modernized, and it was decided to rewrite thousands of lines of Pascal into C#. Unbeknownst to Kane, that was going to be his foreseeable future.
Needless to say, I started converting, and on a good day, roughly 1,000 lines were converted. Eventually, the higher-ups realized this was not a one-man job. I got called to the manager's office, and as I walk in, I see a familiar face.
Mine. Because of my understanding of the business process, the higher-ups decided it would be beneficial if I helped with the conversion. How many years of Pascal experience did I have? 0.
By the time Matthew started, I had been converting for a few months and had a working understanding of If the past looks like this, the C# must look like that.
Kane showed me the ropes, and we converted and converted and converted. We started to understand the Pascal, and because of that, we could start working smart and not hard.
So because we wanted to work smarter, we decided why not write code to do it for us.
That is when the Pascal to C# converter was born. Now don't get me wrong, this is not the prettiest console app. However, it cuts our commenting time down substantially.
A few weeks later, and the conversion was complete. We learned to swim, but only in the legacy waters.
Angular, what is Angular? That is what we asked ourselves when we got put into a completely different project.
Whilst at the company, we worked mainly on back-end code, mainly C#, and then the two of us were put on a project with a new tech stack, new to us and new to the company itself.
We were given quite a strict deadline, and so we had to learn by doing. Unfortunately for us, our fellow teammates weren't familiar with Angular, so it was left up to Angular.io and Stack Overflow to help us when we had questions.
Through pair programming, determination, and focus, we managed to complete the project, including the hosting and maintenance.
We found it progressively easier to pick up new tech stacks, being thrown into the deep end and learning for ourselves, regained confidence and somewhat preparedness for new waters ahead.
There are so many resources out there that it makes it a lot easier for us to learn and discover new things.
Sometimes the best way to learn is simply dive in and go from there.
Having someone to bounce ideas and questions around with also helps to make it less scary, and having a second pair of eyes helps spot those little issues that were missed.
That is the story of how we learned to swim without floaties. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
That's it.
Alrighty, thanks so much, guys. Let's quickly pop over. So I think before we get into asking the audience for a couple of questions on our little lightning talk, I wanted to just ask from your side, what was the biggest challenge for you guys as friends? You know, working together and actually learning to go through this process together. What was the toughest bit for you guys?
So now, the thing that we learned with learning together can be very difficult, very frustrating when you both don't know what's happening. There was a bit of strain on our friendship, but we're both stubborn and we're both eager to learn. And so we did help each other out. We did get frustrated at each other quite a few times, but overall we made it, we got over it, and we became better developers through paired programming and being there for each other with the late nights and the confusion.
That's awesome. So audience, do you guys have any questions about pair programming and jumping onto a legacy project? Leave them in the comments below. We will get to those. And then Matt and Kane, do you have any advice for young developers, potentially some of our grads who are joining very soon, on how to adopt this mindset? What's important when you start doing proper pair programming?
So one of the most important things about pair programming is the fact that it's two sets of eyes, it's two different opinions. And so that is beneficial, but it can also be frustrating. So one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is when you're so focused on a certain piece of code, you kind of develop these these blinders. And so you miss these stupid little bugs, these stupid little logical issues in the code and trying to understand. But if you have that second pair of eyes and you have that support, then it can make it a lot easier to do.
I agree. I don't think we would have become like the developers we are today without motivating each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, actually. And before we head off, what is the next language that you guys are going to tackle together?
Yeah, there's so many different languages.
I think it's definitely going to be more mobile focused, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe our next side project will be on the App Store, the Google Play Store.
Yeah, I think everything's going towards like universal, and most people are on their phones, so you don't want to design websites that do not translate nicely to phones. So I definitely think there's lots of languages out there that can be used universally, but there will always be new languages, there will always be new challenges. But just remember, buddy system.
All right, and we have a question from Alex, and he asks, when you guys disagreed on a point, how did you reach a consensus? Obviously, two heads are better than one, but in some cases also not.
So when we first started working together, obviously we needed to know our strengths and weaknesses. Dealing with conflict, it was tough, but it didn't get physical. It was tough, but we managed. We knew which buttons not to press.
Yeah. So we did. It was quite a difficult lesson, but we did eventually learn that we weren't always angry with each other or angry with the project, and so it's not fair to the other person to take out that anger on them. So we did learn to separate work and play. So yeah.
All right, no, that's awesome. Thanks so much, guys. I agree, it is a fantastic life story to share. Thank you for putting together your slides and for being bold enough to put this out into the world. So if you guys have more questions, leave them in the comments. And without further ado, I have the pleasure in welcoming Bill to the stage for his talk. This is something quite special. I know initially when we started planning and started speaking about this, this was at the very inception of the Speakers Forge. So I'm very proud and very honored to introduce Bill to the stage on his topic on mentorship. So Bill, I don't know if you want to tweak your screen before we send you live.
No, I think let's send me live.
Sending you live.
Okay, hi everybody, and as Anine said, this talk is very close to my heart. Please forgive me if I stutter a bit, seeing as I just picked up something in my lungs, so I might have to stop to cough for a bit. But this talk is also something that might help Matt and his colleague Kane a little bit extra. So the talk is mentorship, not just for the protege. Basically, it's subtitled, What is Mentorship and Why You Should Consider Being a Mentor? Because it's all good and well for the client, for the junior or the mentee, but what about the mentor itself? What do they get out of it? So first off, a little bit about me. My name is Bill, as Anina said. I am a senior Java developer here at Dariel. I started in the industry in December 2005 after getting a BE in computer engineering from University of Pretoria. I've worked in various industries, including traffic enforcement, weighbridges, education, finance, and half a dozen others which are too small to mention. But why should you listen to me? Well, I've worked with a number of good mentees through the years. And that's what this talk is about. What my experience is from all of that. So let's go on to the next slide. This is just a quick plan of action on what the talk is about. First, we're going to go through definitions, which is, so we have a nice good basis of what exactly the concepts are I'm talking about. Then we're going to move into the meaning and experiences, as in what I drew from the meaning and from these definitions and the experiences I've got. And then, of course, we'll have a conclusion, which is a little bit more questions answered. So let's start off with the definitions. Nice and simple. All these definitions come from Google, and they actually come from the Oxford Languages. So apprenticeship, it's the first thing that most people think about. And its definition is the position of an apprentice. That doesn't seem very helpful, does it? So now we move on to what is an apprentice? And an apprentice is a person who is learning a trade from a skilled employer. Rather more useful. So let's go into what is mentorship. And this is where we find that mentorship is the guidance provided by a mentor, especially an experienced person in a company or educational institution. So just for completeness, we look at what is a mentor, an experienced and trusted advisor. So now that we have the definitions, let's move on to what is the meaning of this and what is the experiences that I can show to back them up. So first off, we look at the apprenticeship. This is your typical first experience. You are on a team. Your project is probably already late. You're running behind. And management decides, let's add another person. And if you've ever read the Mythical Man Month, it's, one woman makes a baby in 9 months. Can 9 women make a baby in 1 month? And this is where it comes off of. You have to teach this new guy probably the entire environment and all the technology stack. I think this is where Matt and Kane have a lot of experience in. They have to start up. And if you have somebody who you can talk to about this, it helps a lot. You as a mentor, or in this case, the master, forgive the term, I don't know what the new term for that is all PC, can help you in a lot. I usually tell my guys, work on it for 15 minutes. If you have an issue, come talk to me. Yes, I know you're going to slow me down, but the quicker I get you up to speed, the quicker we can get it working. So that's the apprenticeship. What about mentorship? Now, I'm going to start with the bad side. The company policy is everybody new has to have a mentor. So you get assigned a mentor, or a mentor decides, guess what? You are now my mentee, my protege, because I get a little bit of monetary compensation, so it's fine. So what happens is you typically meet for 1 hour, 3 times a month, but you don't know this person, or you don't want to learn what they're teaching. So there's no connection and no exposure. In my career, I have actually had this, not an assigned, but I happen to be the most senior technical person in the company, and we just hired a whole set of grads. And this is where I first experienced the different viewpoints and the different ways of approaching it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, because it actually gets to a point where you explain to someone, and they don't actually understand it, and they just keep going. And that's where it's very important that your way of thinking and your mentality is open between it. Just to answer Chris there, he's asking what is the difference between a mentor and a coach. There's not much difference depending on how you approach it, and I'm hoping I can go further in and you'll be able to see if there is any difference. It will be interesting to hear what your thoughts are as well. So let's go on to the next one, the good side, or as I say here, the not so bad. Now, among these graduate groups that we'd hired, the same place where I had the graduates who I didn't click with, because every time I tried to assist them or they came to me for help, they were just looking for the straight technical solution, which is all well and good. But the whole point of mentorship is to give advice and to understand where they are in their point of life. Now, a couple of these, excuse me, sorry. Now, one or two of these other grads, they'd started with the technical discussion. And the big thing about it is try. And let's discuss why you're having the problem. Now, it started off fairly simple with just, here's this problem. Okay, let's get to the heart of the problem. Let's solve that. But then it started turning into, we're going out for lunch to go and buy lunch at the local store. We're saving petrol by driving together. And we start discussing things like the solid principles, the rest environment, and quite a few other major technical questions. And then it started going deeper and deeper. And an offhand comment by one of these graduates actually came up with a very good solution to a problem we were having in the code base. And we explored it a bit. And then I actually fully changed the technical direction of the project based on that idea. And it actually turned out to be a very good thing. And it's very important. So now that we've looked at what my experiences are, what can I take from it? What is the conclusions? And the big thing here is, what is the difference between apprenticeship and mentorship? Because my experience has gone into both. If we look at apprenticeship, also from the definitions, to me, it's much more of a teaching or learning in a new skill in the workplace. That skill can be Spring Boot, Spring Batch, Java EE, how to get Hibernate connected. The roles are typically well defined and the experience level is very different. And typically it's a junior to a senior who is teaching, or even an intermediate who is teaching it. Whereas mentorship, on the other hand, is where you are teaching and the mentee is learning a way of thinking and a way of approaching. And that's where it can be a lifelong relationship. It doesn't have to be just until the person is up to speed. The other thing, of course, is it's guidance rather than instruction. You typically find it, how about you, yourself saying the words, how about you try this? How about we look at that? And a big answer is, if you don't know the answer, you must never say, you can always say, I don't know the answer, but let's go find out. As I say here as well, that typically the roles are very blurred as each party brings the different experiences and ideas to the table. And that's very important. Even though the mentee has less knowledge and less experience, they have different knowledge and different experiences, which would be very useful. A big part of it, of course, is knowing when the mentee has to sink, because everybody has to learn from their own mistakes. So it's very difficult as a mentor to see somebody make a mistake and then pull them out of the fire before it affects the project. But they learn a lot better from that. Then now we'll talk about what do we get out of mentoring someone. So let's first look at the cons. Obviously, it's time away from work or time away from your project, because you have to spend time talking to the person, discussing it. And the more time you get, you are taken away from your work, from your project, you probably get time taken away from your family because you have to work overtime, weekends to try and catch up. It's also very sapping. There's a lot of energy that comes off it. But, and then of course, at the same time, there's your attention span. I'm sure a lot of you have been working hard on a project. You know, you've been working on a problem, you're thinking all about it, and somebody knocks on your door and says, do you have 5 minutes? Poof, your entire train of thought is gone. And that's the big cons of mentoring someone, or of being in a team in general. So what about the pros? You see, they are listed questions. And as I recall from the not so bad mentees that I've had, the questions allow you to to reevaluate what they say, what they're doing, what they're talking about, even your approach to it. And that can lead to further discussion and further examination of what the problems are. So it's actually very useful. Then I say time here, because even though I mentioned time as a con, but if you've got someone and you've taken them through the right mentorship, you probably have greater faith in them so that you know what problems they are capable of solving. And you can just foister it off onto them, although that is a bad term. And then you'll get a lot of that time back. So it may not be immediate, but in the long run, you'll get the time back. Then I mentioned energy. And yes, a good mentee with the energy and passion can build up your own energy and passion for a problem. And that is great, especially if you've been in the industry for a long time. You've seen it all. You've experienced it and you're downtrodden. But then a new person comes in and starts reinvigorating your entire being. So now we look at what makes a good mentor. The first one is relevant experience and knowledge. Obviously, you cannot expect a graduate who's just starting out in their career in a technical position to have a mentor that has been in management for 15 years and has sort of left the technical side behind. I think many sources actually recommend that it's only 5 to 10 years experience level gap between the people, such that you have a common basis. You have to sort of be able to empathize with your mentee. Then the enthusiasm for sharing that experience. You need to be willing to talk about your experiences, because if you can't learn from your own mistakes, learn from somebody else's. Obviously, there's the respectful attitude, the eagerness to invest in others. Now, the eagerness to invest in others, I've always heard that, if I don't teach somebody, they can't fire me. Yes, that's all well and good, but if you don't teach somebody, you can't get promoted, so you'll be stuck doing the same thing all the time. Then it's a very hard one. The ability to give honest and direct feedback. We must also add there the ability to receive honest and direct feedback, because it goes both ways, and that's very important. And then, of course, there's the reflective listening and empathy. You need to be able to understand what the person is doing, what issues they're running into, and how you can assist them. And obviously it goes both ways, because both people in the relationship need to listen. So the basic conclusion is, try being a mentor to someone. It is worth it in more ways than you think. And it's not only for you, it's for the other parties. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions?
I think from my side, Bill, if you don't mind me being a little bit forward, just as a starting point, thank you so much for your talk. I'd love to know from your side if you yourself still have a mentor, and if so, how frequently do you meet with them, or is that something that you've taken on informally now?
That is a very good question. Unfortunately, I've not actually had much experience on the side of being the mentee. I have had informal talks with a number of people throughout my career, but typically that relationship does sort of fall apart as either I leave the company or the mentor leaves the company. I am eager to actually start engaging in some mentorship as a mentee, but I feel the sort of the informal side of, as you're working with someone, get to know them and drill their brain down to as much as you can. I know Rian, I have done that a few times with him, and I hope he doesn't think I'm bugging him.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And I see there's a question around what approaches do you use to resolve deadlock situations? For example, formal versus informal mentoring situations. How do you approach these sorts of things?
That is a very good question. I tend to much prefer the informal way, and it's always a discussion. I don't know if that deadlock might actually have been for the previous guys, for Matt and Kane. But yeah, it always comes down to experience. You must always be willing to listen to people, but eventually, as a senior and as the mentor, you kind of have to say, it's your career. I've given you the advice I need, the advice I'm able. It's your issue. Go ahead. I will support you either way.
Absolutely. And I see Wayne has commented that the coach doesn't need to necessarily know the game, but the mentor does. And then we have an anonymous question more around the mentoring process within Dariel. And yes, there is a more official process, but there's also loads of more informal processes within that. On to that question, I see Vida has also asked whether mentorship should always be formally defined. What are your views on this, Bill?
I find that it probably starts off with informal. It can be formalized. Personally, I've never seen the benefit of having a formal relationship because it sometimes degrades to the I'm doing it because I get something out of it from the company instead of I'm doing it because I get something out of it in my personal capacity. And that's where I tend to prefer the informal relationship. But if it's formal, by all means, sometimes it works.
Absolutely. And what happens if you find yourself in a position where there's a compatibility issue between the mentor and the mentee and the relationship isn't working? How might either party address an issue? This is an anonymous question, but I'm also quite keen to hear what the view is here.
I think that is actually a very good question. And I would actually assume it's like any relationship in life, communication. You need to talk about it, and sometimes the relationship is just not meant to be, or it's past its usefulness, and both parties need to just move on. The big thing about it is it should be informal, it should be open and availability. It's not a fixed thing that you have to do. It's more along the lines of you have the ability to help guide someone or be guided by someone. So if it's not working for you, move on. Yeah.
Absolutely. I see Alex has also asked, as a workplace, other than where it's often just given to you, how do you identify that you want to be in these sorts of relationships and a continuation of the action in that relationship? So how do you action forming this relationship? So basically, if I'm understanding correctly, how do you realize that this is the right time for you to start moving into the sort of mentorship programming?
I find it's almost throughout my career, it's sort of just fallen in. It starts off with an apprenticeship where I teach somebody the skills, but then it goes on to an outreach of, and in my mind, it's always driven by the mentee, by the person who has the most to gain in terms of experience and knowledge. Me as a mentor, I cannot push myself onto somebody, but I can pull the knowledge from somebody else. And that's how I feel most of these relationships should start, with the mentee going out to say, I want to learn from you. Can you help me? And I mean, it might not even be those words. It might be, I have a problem with this. Can we discuss it? and something as simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does accountability then work in these informal relationships?
Well, that's why it's informal. Is there even accountability? And the thing is, because it all comes down to, you are not forcing somebody to do anything. You are just advising them. If they take the advice, great. If it works for them, even better. But if they don't take the advice, they don't take the guidance, is it really your problem? Yes, you can probably talk with them and discuss it and then say, maybe we should discuss it further or dissolve the relationship. But yeah, I think that's my view.
Absolutely. I think it speaks to a level of self-awareness and how that plays into, the benefits for the relationships as well. All right, everybody. Today's session is a teeny bit shorter, so we still have time for questions if there's anybody else who wanted to add anything. Bill, anything else from your side?
No, nothing from my side. Thank you very much for the questions. I see there was one more question of how does the mentee supposedly end the relationship with the superior or mentor? And as it comes with, it could be you just fall out of contact or you just stop asking questions. It's, as you say, it comes back to the self-awareness of when are you ready?
Yeah, definitely. And I see Wayne has also commented that mentorship, like philanthropy, is a higher order of existence. That is possibly one of the most profound quotes that we've had up to date on a Dariel conference. Thank you, Wayne.
And it is very true, yes, because you get out something from giving, like philanthropy. So yes.
Yes, I see it's a Mufasa moment, definitely. Alrighty, everybody. So, as I mentioned, unfortunately, one of our speakers was not able to join us today. We hope that he's feeling much better, but today's session was really something special, and I want to take some time to thank Matthew and Kane for sharing their experience in their journey in getting settled in a very volatile environment, and for Bill for sharing this beautiful journey that you've taken on. We really appreciate the work and we appreciate the time. And without any further questions, I'm going to end us off here today. This recording will also be live streamed and shared on YouTube, so please go and take a look at that. If you want to add any further questions, we are always open. The next session will likely be happening at the end of January, and we will share further communications around that very soon. But thank you so much for all of your time, for joining us in this brand new year. So thank you, have a fantastic one, and for right now, goodbye.